Good morning, good afternoon, all. It's great to see you. Thank you for joining. We still have some of our professional partners pouring into the session, so we'll give it just another minute or so. Thanks for making time to be with us today. Robin, do you have anyone who's still in the waiting room, or are we good to go?
We are good to go.
Outstanding. Well, welcome everyone. We're very happy to see you all be part of the ASCP BOC Professional Partners Collaborative. As you know, this is our second round, inviting our partners to engage in a topic and provide feedback. Want to again appreciate all of you, and I also want to appreciate the fact that even with our inaugural session, it was outstanding to see so many friendly, well-renowned colleagues, but also new faces. And by way of introductions, last time we dedicated quite a bit of time to our round of introductions. It was meaningful and helpful. But I do want to certainly give an opportunity to those who are joining us for the first time. So we will move into introductions in just a bit, as I can kind of see by way of who's available. I'll reach out and call names. If you are not on mute, if you could switch your audio to mute, we're getting a little bit of background. All right, sounds good. So as you know, when we first met, everyone was invited to partake in the journey of nomenclature. We'll touch on that a little bit today. But before we do, again, I want to invite everyone for their round of introductions. So if you did not attend the first collaborative session, I'll call your name, but then I'll also give the opportunity to put your hand up if I don't call on you. And to be fair, our focus again today is on AI, but I'll do the introduction of our presenters in about 10 minutes time. So by way of introductions, we're noticing that it is the summer months. We don't have quite the volume of attendees as we historically had, but we do again have new attendees and included the roster of who attended last. So if this is your first time, please take a look at the roster to get to know everyone. And from what I can tell, India, have you joined us? India Tips with Abhes. All right, I'm gonna keep going down the line again. It's a pretty wide screen here. Sharon with ASFA, Sharon Leong, looked like you were a potential new attendee as well. Okay. Next, we'll move into AABB. Deborah Ben Avram, are you able to join today? Boy, I'm like batting it out of the park this morning. AMLI, the Association of Medical Laboratory Immunologists, they are a new partner organization who also expressed interest in joining. And again, maybe these people are still on their way. So Maggie Vogel. I can certainly see that although we don't have a KHAP representation with either Gina or Kalyani Nayak, Ahmad and Bruce, I see you're both joining us from the International Clinical Cytometry Society, so we have our first match. Ahmad,
Hello.
I'll look to you first for your introduction. And again, we join you as professional partners. Please take a look at the roster of those who joined in our first session. Ahmad, I'll hand it off to you. Name the organization you're representing and how you contribute to patient care on a daily basis.
Hello. Thank you, Amy, very much. Good to see you again, and very nice to be part of this collaborative effort. It's a really nice thing to be part of, and I'm really appreciative to the ASCP BOC for organizing it. So yeah, my name is Ahmad Al-Attar. I'm the manager of the clinical flow cytometry lab at U of L Health in Louisville, in Kentucky. I represent the ICCS, the International Clinical Cytometry Society. I love my flow cytometry, and so I contribute to patient healthcare by performing and analyzing and interpreting flow cytometry data all day long.
And outstanding at what you do. Thank you, Ahmad. Happy to have you here. Bruce, we'll look to you next.
Thank
Welcome.
thank you, Amy. So good to see you again. I appreciate the invitation to be part of this collaborative group. There's such a wide variety of representation here. I'm very impressed, but I think it speaks volumes as to how important it is that we all be in communication on matters of whether it's the topic today or even future topics as they pertain to good laboratory practices. I too am representing the International Clinical Cytometry Society, and I'm also representing the International Society for the Advancement of Cytometry, ISAC. I'm the liaison for that organization to the CAP. But as Ahmad shared, our passion is certainly with flow cytometry, and at the same time, though, the respect that we have for our colleagues in the other laboratory practices is one that we both share.
Outstanding. Thanks as well to you, Bruce, for all of your positive contributions to our patients and our peer professionals. With the mention of ISAC, yes, they are an invited partner, and I don't believe Courtney came and was able to join us today. But again, I certainly want to be inclusive of everyone. Likewise, we had an invited ISBER, and I'm not seeing Anna as a new attendee, but we thought maybe she would be here, so outstanding. I do see one of my BOC colleagues that I'd like to introduce in a moment, but ahead of doing so, are there any professional partners who either in our first inaugural session or here today did not have the opportunity to introduce themselves? All
That
right.
would be me.
Oh, okay.
I'm
Lorna,
sorry. This is
welcome with KHAP.
Thanks. Yes. I'm Lorna Fraser Lindsay. I'm the Director of Information and Communication for KHAP, the Commission on Accreditation of Allied Health Education Program. Um, Gina is taking some time off, and so I am here in her stead.
Well, thank you, Lorna, and please forgive me. I was going through, as you know, a very extensive roster. I had seen Kalyani's name and Gina's name as good colleagues of yours. Thank you so much for being here and for all the excellent work that KHAP does on our behalf. So we're excited to have you join. All right, with the risk of...
I got one more. So
Oh,
like
good. Thank you.
maybe we can't we work this way. So my name is Ryan Seniorjohn. I'm actually with the American Association of Pathologist Assistants, which is a partner with ASCP.
Yes.
So I am like I said, I'm a physician assistant specialized in pathology, working that on as a contractor now. I move around a lot now, but I do, gross tissue all day long, run histology labs, so forth. But I also have a master's in IT and healthcare informatics. And so I'm also consulting on a lot of the different LIS systems and helping labs get their IT systems up to par within the AP lab, which is very lacking most of the time. So, and then my counterpart, who we are now starting a special interest group within the PA group that is focused on emerging technology, new and emerging technology. And so, Aaron, I'm going to toss it to you because you're in here too.
Thank you very much for
Thanks,
joining,
Ryan.
Ryan. We certainly appreciate our collaboration with AAPA. Thank you for being here today. And in addition to all you're doing so well, we love the background. So thanks for coming to promote.
I'll
Hi,
just
Aaron.
say real quick, I'm Aaron Wallace. I'm a pathologist assistant, also co-leading the New and Emerging Technologies Special Interest Group at the American Association of Pathologist Assistants. And my work is primarily grossing in the lab, but I have a great interest in a lot of new and emerging technologies in the field and how they apply to my profession specifically, but also to the field of pathology broadly. Happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Aaron. Really appreciate again all that you bring, not only as relates to AAPA, but the patients that we serve. I sense that the two of you are excited to hear about what we have to share regarding AI. We are going to dabble just a little bit more in nomenclature, but ahead of doing so, again, last call, anybody else from our professional partners? Again, I'm sorry if I overlooked anyone. All right. I would like to take the opportunity to have Joe Baker, our BOC Director of Engagement and Experience, introduce himself, as this is his first attendance at the Professional Partners Collaboration. Joe, I'll hand it off to you.
Yeah, as Amy said, Joe Baker, Director of Engagement and Experience for the BOC, working in lots of different areas with constituent services, social media, publications, our surveying and analysis. If I was going to boil everything that I do down to just like a short statement, I would say my role is to inform all of our credential holders and constituents about the value of the BOC credentials, encourage those who haven't yet got credentialed by us to just do it, because it all leads to improved patient diagnosis and outcomes. So happy to be here.
Wonderful. Thank you, Joe. It's an honor to work with you as well. All right, we are moving very close to the focus topic of today, which is, again, artificial intelligence, and we have two esteemed leaders to guide us in that dialogue. But I also want to be fair to the fact that we had decided in our first inaugural Professional Partners Collaborative that we recognize nomenclature as a journey, and hence the agenda item for nomenclature nomads. And so as we are collectively moving through this journey, as you know, if you attended the first session, we resourced you with what we've done on behalf of the Nomenclature Task Force, the Board of Governors, from the Board of Certification, to really unify and make accurate laboratory professional nomenclature. Since that time. And for those of you who are new, please know we are not leaving anyone behind. All resources, all recordings will be made available to anyone who joins our collaborative. So we will certainly bring you up to current state with that. Since the last time we met, we have developed both MLS and MLT job description templates. Again, we want to be resourcing professionals in the field, even to point of the C-suite, hiring managers, human resources, and beyond, with meaningful, helpful resources that are going to help them make decisions and guide change. So those job descriptions are now available. Robin will make sure those land in your inbox. In addition, we continue to explore publication standards. So Robin's leadership, as well as Joe's leadership, is very much in this space, working closely with ASCP, ASCLS, NACLS, other partners, and all of you. We will be reaching out with those publication standards again to make accurate our nomenclature standards. And likewise, we've been doing social listening. Thank you for the feedback that you offered to us in our initial collaborative. You know, certain organizations exploring what might be next, whether it's the names of programs or it's the names of professionals. And so we heard from AAPA. Aubrey, you had some really thoughtful questions as relates to histotechnology. We also heard from AGT. As we know, they're exploring some opportunities. And I also see our colleague joining us from ADLM, who, you know, in and of yourselves have gone through a significant nomenclature transition. So we certainly didn't want to just take the topic of nomenclature and set it on a shelf and say one and done. We wanted to let you know what we've done since we last met. Our social listening continues with our Board of Certification examination committees, looking to exchange nomenclature where it's recognized currently as technologist, moving more towards scientist. So just wanted to give you those few updates, but then open up the floor again. This is a collaborative. We hope to hear from everyone as is meaningful to them. You know, again, social listening. If you have any updates as relates to professional nomenclature, areas where we can do additional research to resource you, or even questions that you may have, we're here to help. So any advancements regarding nomenclature or questions since we last met? All right, with that, it is clear we are here to focus on AI. And we're very excited to do so. Again, we see the Board of Certification as a partner for all of you. And today our focus topic is on artificial intelligence, AI, and the curating credentialing experiences. We have two stellar experts who are going to be leading us in this dialogue, and I know at least one of them, Mark, will probably say I'm not an expert, I'm learning along as we all are. And I think that's a really safe place to be, whether an expert or whether, this being sort of a curiosity, let's say. I think we all span the spectrum of what we know about AI and what we could continue to learn. And so we wanted to take this point in time, again, to resource you, to highlight AI, the pitfalls and the potentials. And Mark, I'll look to you to bring up the slide deck, but ultimately, as he's doing so, want to, again, just encourage everyone to know this is an open format. We will share our perspectives, our experiences, emerging opportunities for policies and the like, but this is meant to be in full dialogue. And so as we make this transition to the presentation, I'd like to start first by introducing Lisa Simmons. Lisa is our Chief Legal Officer, and she has been certainly a partner internally and guiding us when it comes to the ethical use of AI and also researching the legalities and impacts of that. Mark Moen, equally outstanding as a reliable colleague. Mark is our Chief Information Officer at the ASCP and has again provided many insights that are meaningful to us as we explore the world of AI. I want to be fair to the fact that we only have just about 45 minutes that remain together that will give us many opportunities to learn as well as to listen to each other. And I just want to be fair to the fact that we are going to be focused on credentialing as relates to AI, but we don't have all the answers. And so with that, I'd like to go to the next slide and just reconcile the fact that the BOC in and of itself, as we guide you through this agenda, Mark and Lisa will be offering definitions and an overview of AI. We'll be talking about use cases for the Board of Certification, some unique, innovative opportunities we perceive the use of AI as being meaningful, but also offering you guidelines and best practices. These may be aligned with what you're doing in your own organization. They may be new and novel, but this gives us the opportunity to walk through questions and answers. All in all, when we look at the Board of Certification being sort of the central nexus to this Professional Partners Collaborative, I want to assure you that we do aim to be progressive and continue to prioritize innovation. AI fits within that scope. But I also want to be fair to the fact that because AI is changing and advancing so rapidly, we have to start with some inclusion criteria and also some exclusion criteria. And so we are really looking at AI first and foremost to protect our intellectual property. As Mark and Lisa will so well point out to us, that there are great risks as really relates to the release of intellectual property through AI, and we want to protect, again, what's meaningful to our peer professionals and our patients, and that starts with our intellectual property. So that's how we will be using AI integration first. We will then move towards point of innovation. One example being AI helping our applicants understand our eligibility routes. That's a safe place, but it's one that will come after we're sure our intellectual property is safe. So with that, I'm going to hand the agenda over to Mark and Lisa. Thanks so much to both of you. And again, thanks to all of our partners for being here today and contributing in such meaningful, positive ways. It's all yours, Mark and Lisa.
All right. Thank you. Again, I appreciate Amy's introduction. And I'm the Chief Information Officer for ASCP. And as part of that role, I get to serve the Board of Certification. Amy and I and others have a lot of fun talking about strategy and how to use the processes and tools to best serve the people. Joe's a great a partner of ours as well. I think Ryan, you said it, or Aaron, and maybe we want to learn from everybody. Lisa and I are not the sage on this stage. We're just the facilitators for the conversation. We do have some things to share, but we do welcome your feedback and your questions and your observations and your learnings as well. So I hope to get as much out of this by facilitating as I did putting this together with Amy and Lisa. So Lisa, I'll let you jump in with your first slide, and then
Yeah, I included this slide just because I thought it was so amazing, and the point it drives home is really generative AI technology is here to stay. So we do need to grapple with it and understand how to incorporate it into our enterprise operations in a way that is responsible and innovative. But for the time to reach 100 million users, it took mobile phones 16 years, the internet 7 years, Facebook 4.5 years, but ChatGPT 3 months. And that was about a year ago. So we are really clicking along fast, so fast that it's really even hard to put policies in place because things are changing so fast. So what we're going to do today is really more issue spot and really interrupt us because I know Mark is way more of an expert than I am. I am just a lawyer, so I'm coming in more from a non-technical compliance standpoint. But here we go.
when I think, Lisa, you point out, I think that's one of the fun parts of my role, right? I get to partner with you because anytime AI is only an IT decision, it's really even a bigger risk than it is already. And so this collaboration between the BOC and Lisa as chief legal and myself as chief IT, it's a good partnership, and it is changing and moving fast. So we do have a lot to learn and keep track of, but it's also exciting, lots of promise. We just wanted to start out by just defining some common terms. I know a lot of people use the term AI. It means many different things to many different people. There are different definitions, but these are ones we're just kind of using to level set. So today, when we're talking about generative AI, we're talking about when the technology is creating something that's original, right? Stitching something together based out of its I hate to use the word database of knowledge, but based out of its corpus of knowledge. Excuse me. And then NLG, natural language generation, is when the technology is creating words or sentences, written or spoken, that we can understand in whatever our native language is. And the benefit of the NLG approach is that it can use very structured data, rows and columns and grids and tables, what looks like more of a traditional database, or it can use unstructured data. You know, the NLG can pull from videos and audio and just lots of unstructured things that are not in rows and columns. The NLP, the natural language processing, is this informal structure that describes how that data is ingested into the technology. And what it makes us feel like as humans is that the computers can actually understand our written or spoken words. Most of you who have a smart home device, you've said something like, Alexa, play Elton John music from Amazon Music. That's me talking to the computer, and then it playing back my favorite channel from my favorite artist. So I like to coin the phrase, the NLP is the listening and the NLG is connecting, meaning connecting to the human. For those of you that are kind of like to cook or don't like to cook but have lots of stuff in your fridge, my favorite example of the combination of NLP and NLG right now are these smart refrigerators from Samsung and GE, where it can either take a list of or scan what's in your refrigerator and then look at its vast knowledge of recipes. And then it can either email you or send to your mobile device, or some of them actually have a little printer, can print out a recipe card of what you might make for lunch or dinner based on what's in your refrigerator. That's a combination of NLG and NLP at work. Kind of traditional models of AI, there's more models than these two, but these are the ones I think that are most applicable for us in our work in the BOC. There's machine learning, technical term, ginormous sets of data, right? Tons of data in, and then the technology is making what seem to be intelligent actions or bringing back intelligent information based on that machine learning. It's just math. It's just math. So when the chess technology beats the human, it's because they could see the potential moves faster than the human and play the game. We've all been using spam filters in email probably for 15 or 20 years. Those spam filters, as they get better, are basically just reactive AI. And any of you that have ever shopped on Amazon or Wayfair or another platform that's recommending products to you based on other people's products or the things you've searched for or filtered or the questions you've asked it, those recommendation engines are all reactive AI. And then there's limited memory AI. So, temporarily storing in its memory based on past experiences or based on training, based on humans saying more like this, less like that. Don't say this, say that. Don't offer this, offer that. Chatbots, self-driving automobiles, most of those. Anytime you get an email or a dossier that's coming out looking like someone typed it, those are all limited memory AI platforms. Now, for us in the board of certification, I think there's some use cases that are being evaluated, and some of them are new use cases, and some of them are renew. They seem new, but they've been around. So most of you have been on Zoom calls like this or other technology platforms where people are having assessments done from the content that was talked about. This is the summary, this is the gist, this are the key topics. That writing assistance and idea generation is a use of AI, or asking ChatGPT or other platforms to do some market research on your behalf, figuring out a learning plan. Those are all places you can be more efficient in your work with AI. And we did talk a little bit about recommendations and engines, and Amy mentioned this, the eligibility assistant. Based on my education, based on my areas of interest, based on what I bring to the table, what's the best route? We call it the route finder. What's the best route for me to get a board of certification, a BOC certification? That recommendation engine could possibly be overlaid with some AI in the future once we deem it safe. And the old Q&A interactive kind of decision tree chatbots, early versions of this were very much people like me and others programming. If they ask this, then say that. If they ask this, say one of these two things. It was very decision tree oriented. But the new Q&A, the new FAQs, the new chatbots are all based on unstructured data. And again, that's a possibility for us with the BOC in the future. Maybe our 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. customer service could be some version of an AI chatbot. Again, not today, but in the future as we become more comfortable that the answers are going to be truthful. Many of you have seen some of the false starts of this type of technology with maybe H&R Block or others who put out these incredibly powerful engines, but they were giving bad advice. So to Amy's point, we don't want to get ahead of the curve and be giving our constituents bad information or misinformation based on the AI. And then as Lisa and I will remind you this whole presentation, we don't ever want to use AI where we're sharing sensitive information. Assume that when you're using an AI product, you're giving it to the world, unless you're using a licensed, closed platform where you can guarantee based on those T's and C's that what you give the AI is not going to be used to train it or be used and be shared. So those are kind of some ways we're thinking about in the future of using AI with the BOC. Just want to give you a couple examples from using ChatGPT to point out some of its strengths, but also some of its pitfalls. So we asked GPT to build us a table of pathologists that are influential in our industry using, give us the short description, Twitter handle, and a link to their online profile. And so one of the first things you can see based on this answer, this was ChatGPT 3.5, as to the last knowledge update that I had in January 2022. So you have to be careful that these large language models, when you're using them, they're not always looking at the most current relevant information. So that's just kind of one point.
And Mark,
and the other thing is, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to ask a question. This is slightly different from a question I asked you earlier. How can you know, besides the context of the answer, what the time frame is covered by the data that's being provided?
If it doesn't disclose it in the answer, then ask the AI engine.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, that's again, that's just part of the back and forth. The other thing that is nuanced here is, what does influential mean? We don't really know what the technology is considering to be influential. But again, if I'm looking for a quick list and I need a place to start, this is not a bad way to do it, right? So it's like handing it to an intern. I don't want to make final decisions based on what ChatGPT has told me, but this is a pretty quick way to get a nice starting list. And again, nothing I'm doing here is exposing any confidential information, right? So here's an ask that we made this is an older ask, this was last fall, but we asked ChatGPT to write us something in a style of Ned Flanders. And so for those of you who don't know who Ned Flanders is, he's a curmudgeon-y character on The Simpsons. And so if you do know Ned Flanders, you could read this answer that ChatGPT shared, and you'd smile because this does sound a lot like what Ned Flanders would sound like. Okay, so this is kind of fun. The reason we bring this slide up is that no one in the companies that built ChatGPT 3.5 paid Matt Groening any royalties for the tool to watch and ingest 22 seasons of Simpsons to learn how to write in the style of Ned Flanders talking, right? And so on one hand, you think, wow, this is really kind of cool. ChatGPT was able to write something like Ned Flanders. But if you're Matt Groening, you're like, this is not so cool because the technology learned from what I wrote, and The Simpsons is not in the public domain. And so again, we bring this example up to show that on one hand, there's all these cool features and possibilities, but on the other hand, there's a lot of anxiety around copyright and control and in IP. Here's another question we asked it. What study guide resources are available if I'm studying? This is a pretty comprehensive list. We show this to people at ASCP and the BOC. It's a good list. It did, the technology did a good job. Now we asked it another question. This sounds similar. Tell me a little bit about the key differences. And again, not a bad answer, but also there's some technical incorrectness, which is terrible English. Sorry, Amy. Can't think of the right way to say that, but there's an oddity in this answer. Can anybody spot it? This is my favorite slide to tee up for Amy. Amy, if nobody else can spot it, go ahead and share with us what's not quite right about this answer.
Sure. So much of this is right, as can be affirmed by you, Aubrey, Aaron, Ryan, and others, right? But when you look at this through the lens of the BOC, it's somewhat misleading if you look at the third bullet point regarding certification. It's actually the HTL certification that we offer for histotechnologists, not to be confused with the HT credential for histology technicians. So, close but not quite a cookie. And I think that's where, again, to Mark's good point, when he kicked off the session, this is a starting point, might be meaningful, but we really need for humans to lean in with their expertise.
Yeah. I think Lisa talks a little bit more about this, but we do use some of these large language model tools in getting our work done at the ASCP, but we're using the ones that are private and closed most of the time, or if we're using the public ones, we're really treating it like an intern. We're not giving them anything to work with that we wouldn't want disclosed. And when it comes back, we're like, hey, you're a really smart intern, but people have to look at this and vet this and comb this over before we would release this information to the public. So the recommendation that Lisa and I and Amy and others have is the way we're going to start working with these AI tools in the BOC is to help us protect the intellectual property of the BOC. These AI tools have a global reach, which is nice. They're not just bound by the continental United States or by North America. And the other thing with IP protection, many different companies will tell you they'll do IP protection, but ironically, they're using your IP to do very simple searches out in the public domain. And by using your IP to do searching, they're actually exposing your IP to the public search engines, which is checking it into the public domain. So we're going to be working with vendors that use proprietary algorithms that don't actually use the actual questions when they're doing the searching, because we don't want to expose the actual questions to see if those actual questions are being used. Seems a little circuitous, but it's a very fine descriptor of how we're going to be using some of these tools, but using them cautiously as we begin to search for misuse of our IP. Somebody have a question? I see something pop up in the chat. Oh, Susan in the waiting room. Do you want to let her in? That's what I see on my screen, Amy. Not sure. Robin, if that's what you see.
Yep, she's been admitted.
Okay, great. Okay, cool. All right. Lisa, jump on and I'll stop. Enough of Mo talking.
All right, and this is really coming more directly from Amy in collaboration with Mark and I, and that is, at least for now, the BOC has made a policy decision that AI should not be utilized as an exam writing tool for BOC for a number of reasons, which we will be discussing during the rest of this seminar. That is a current decision. That's not to say that decision won't be changed in the future if the technology improves, but that is the steady state right now for BOC. Amy, do you have anything to add to that?
Agree, Lisa. Very much consistent with how I had, kicked off our session relating to inclusion and exclusion criteria. So we will prioritize the safety and security. Thank you.
Right now, I'm, coming in as a lawyer. I am not a technical person. However, I'm sensitive to the limitations on the use of AI during all of our operations, and I just want to speak about a few of them today, which address accuracy, transparency, data privacy and security, IP ownership. Mark has touched on that a little bit, ethics, and then some legal restrictions, which are often in the T's and C's if you review them when you're using AI. So, Mark, you can go to the next page. This has been mentioned a couple times today, but it's really important to remember that AI is a tool. It's a tool that we can use in doing our jobs, but it is at least not currently a replacement for experience or insight. And I love this quote that I found in my research, which is that AI does not, quote, mull problems, have epiphanies, or moments of brilliance like humans do. So you can use AI to sort of jumpstart your research, jumpstart your writing, your drafting, but it isn't going to entirely replace that human touch. When you receive content from AI, treat it, like Mark said, like you received content from an intern or a first draft, and something that you need to look at carefully to check, first of all, for fabrications and factual errors. AI has been known to make things up in its desire to satisfy your desire for information. AI can also pick up wholesale content that somebody else wrote, which then becomes plagiarism if it's used in your content. AI is based upon all the content that's out there in the general domain, in the public domain, so it can pick up biases that are inherent in the public domain. So you really want to look through the content to make sure that it complies with your organization's anti-discrimination policies, etc. So you're creating work product with AI assistance, but not purely with AI assistance. I looked at a couple of things that have occurred involving the use of AI, and some of you may have noticed this when you did your taxes, or if you use TurboTax or one of the other tax assistance platforms. This year they all had AI question and answer portions where you could ask task questions while you were finished completing your taxes. Well, they did research on the quality of the output that TurboTax and H&R Block came, and found out that TurboTax was 50% of the time wrong, and HR Block, their Q&A, was 30% of the time wrong. Both of these platforms did carefully advise you as a user not to rely on the information for purposes of finalizing your tax returns. But not everybody always reads the fine details of the T's and C's, you know, to recognize that you really couldn't rely on that for final decision making. I found another study involving urology, so it's in the scientific context, and they explored the performance of ChatGPT in answering urology questions, basic urology questions, and they compared it to residents' answers to the same questions. They asked ChatGPT to resolve current debates within the constructs of urology. And they asked ChatGPT to provide recommendations to commonly asked patient questions. So ChatGPT 3.5, which is the earlier version of ChatGPT, was right around 50% of the time to those 35 common urology questions. Apparently, ChatGPT 3.5 did not do well at all with respect to speaking about current debates in the urology field. And ChatGPT did okay answering common questions from patients. So you can see going from low stakes to high stakes, there are areas in which these technologies may be useful right now and areas in which you should be wary going forward until the technology improves. Transparency. And you're going to hear more and more about this as laws and regulations start to be enacted. But it's going to be a best practice that you be transparent about how AI is being used when you draft your content. So we are recommending that you disclose your usage, preferably by identifying what was used. And you should also ask your vendors what they are using if you're relying on their content to make sure that you are being transparent when AI is being used to draft content. Next. All right, this is something that I don't think we can overstate, at least not until the technologies are improved. Don't feed the AI tool anything that you don't want to be injected into the knowledge bank. And there's been many well-publicized instances where, for example, Samsung engineers used AI to resolve a coding issue, not realizing that what they put into ChatGPT was now in the public domain. So there are certain, ChatGPT actually, I think, says in their terms and conditions that when you use their non-licensed version, they will use your data to train the system. So they say that in the T's and C's, but you may not appreciate that unless you review the T's and C's. And that's really true of any kind of AI platform that you use. Don't use prompts containing confidential information involving your patients or your students. Don't use third-party brand names to avoid infringing on other people's intellectual content. And if you are entering into a contract with a vendor, try to opt out of the use of your inputs for training the AI model, which they will then be selling to other customers. So that's always going to, that's a tough negotiation item with these AI vendors because they do want to use your data to train their model for other customers. So you have to be aggressive, and it will be a matter of negotiation with the vendors.
Hey, Lisa, my favorite one about this is because we're all on Zoom, I think it's apt, and I'm not picking on Zoom or Otter, but we use a tool called Otter to do some summaries, but we are using a licensed closed AI system to do that. But the terms and conditions are such that if anyone on the Zoom call is not using a paid licensed version of Zoom, then everything that's used in the summary and all the recordings are available for the public training of Zoom. And so, I don't know that a lot of our end users understand the difference between, oh, I have a login to Zoom, so I have an account, versus I have a paid licensed account for Zoom. And so it's those subtle nuances. Again, their desire is to gain as much information as they can to train its models. So we're very cautious about using these third-party plugins to Zoom or Teams to do meeting minutes or to do meeting summaries, because if people are not paying attention to those T's and C's and we don't control those, then all of a sudden everything from the meeting is available in the training model. So this is one of my favorite slides, Lisa.
Yeah, and another thing that I discovered in just in a negotiation with one particular vendor is this vendor, and again, I'm not technical, and this was probably more obvious to Mark, but the way they described what they could use from our data was, I found, incomprehensible to me. And if you just slid over that, you might not have understood really how they intended to, and we kept going back and back and back to this vendor. How are you using our data? And it was a lot of gobbledygook at the beginning, but I think we ultimately nailed them down. But pay
You
attention.
persevered, Lisa, as you do. You
Yeah, I was
persevered.
annoying. I know I was annoying, but okay, next slide. So IP ownership.
I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
actually wondered if you were able to go back one slide. I didn't see a hand raised, so sorry to jump in and
Sorry.
interrupt.
And we can't see everything, so jump in. We
Yeah.
can't see all the hands. Yeah.
I was as Ryan put in the chat, wow, on the Zoom and Otter and other tools used to summarize. I do use summary tools to help guide and remind what I may have missed in conversations, which include item writing discussions with faculty. This is the first time I've heard that information may be used for training purposes with those third-party tools if not everybody is a licensed user versus just an account holder. And I don't know if others on the call are also surprised to hear it, and it's definitely going to change when and how I use some of these tools. I appreciate you bringing that up as a maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but I also don't know even where to start on finding what is and isn't being shared.
Yeah. The first place to look is at their terms and condition and their privacy policies, which you should be able to find on the platform website. They're not always easy to understand. So if you have a question, you might have to actually go to the vendor, but that's where I would start. Mark?
Yeah, exactly. And again, I'm not trying to disparage the vendors. They're trying to do the best that they can do. But this Zoom one is such a classic one because many, many, many people have a Zoom account, but many, many, many people don't have a paid Zoom account. And that's the nuance that is allowing them to harvest everything that's being discussed in the meetings. And so again, the bigger the group, like for this group, how can I say to Rob and Lewis, Robin, you need to ensure everyone who joins this call today has a paid Zoom license. Robin has no way to do that, and even, let's assume best intentions from you, Dennis. You're saying, yes, I do, but you don't. And not because you're trying to be misleading to the BOC. You just, you thought your institution paid, they switched you to a free, you didn't really realize, right? So it's very, again, I'm not trying to disparage the use of summary tools, but it's a slippery slope, and we're all learning as we go, and every vendor's different. And so, and we like Otter, we use it, but we have a paid closed usage for Otter. We don't use it in Zoom meetings like this to create summaries for Amy and Robin.
Right. Yep. For me, it really does come back down to the awareness and consent. I was not aware, so there was no way for us to consent to it in my specific cases.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Appreciate it, Dennis.
I think we were a couple slides ahead. Yeah, maybe the next one. I now want to speak a little bit about IP ownership issues. And by that, I mean when you're using AI tools to draft content. Legislation and regulation always trail technology and is slow to catch up. But it is catching up, and things are happening every day. I think we can very firmly say content that is created purely by AI is not going to be protected by copyright. I know I say may not be, but I think I can confidently say will not be protected by copyright. And that is because there's no originality, which is required to obtain the protection of copyright. Copyright only protects material that is created through human creativity. However, if you start with AI content, but then modify, draft, rearrange things, apply your insight, that compilation may very well be protected by copyright. However, in the course of drafting that content, just make sure you keep track of how you used AI to support your traditional authorship tax, and keep track of what you used and how you use that content in case you are asked, or also to be transparent in how you used AI to draft that content. So journals, next page, journals are now starting to grapple with policies, medical journals in this area. And then maybe we skipped a slide, but I just want to address one journal policy that I saw, which said this particular journal said they realized that complete prohibition on the use of AI to draft a journal article is no longer realistic. And so no article will be summarily rejected if the person used AI. But if articles are obviously purely generated using AI, they would be rejected. And this particular journal, it was the American Archivist Journal, actually wants all their authors to disclose the usage of AI in preparing the journal article, content, and also data analysis. And the editors are going to reserve the right to request that the author provide AI transcripts. So actual records of your search results that you used to create the journal article. And every journal is going to have their own policy, and these are going to evolve over time. But if I'm predicting, transparency is going to be a theme in regulation and laws coming forward.
I have a question on that real quick. Do you, in your research about looking that up with journals, are any of them using AI to determine if somebody used AI? Because I see that a lot in universities, like when I just finished my master's, right? In IT, like everything went through an AI, a similarity score, so that they would know whether we used AI or not.
I have heard of journals using AI to determine if AI is being used to generate articles. And I even heard, I think this was at one of our earlier seminars, someone mentioned that using that, they discovered that an author must have used AI because there were 1 million totally made up sites in the article.
Yep.
So now I know nobody in this room would do that, but if you're a journal editor, you might want to consider using some sort of approach to make sure AI wasn't being used.
And perhaps as a related, and I hadn't mentioned it earlier, but I'm reading several fun editorials about AI checking AI.
Right.
And it's the using AI tools to fact check, which using it for plagiarism, but having as an example AI generated content that then you're asking a separate or same AI system to fact check for authenticity and plagiarism.
Right.
But it's at least in my writing groups for our certification programs, it is perhaps not as the initial generative, but then where does AI play a possible role? It also comes back to the privacy, the sharing, and whether or not we want to bank it. But it's coming up in those places as well. AI to check AI.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
very circuitous.
Then of course, this area, technology is moving quickly, but also improving. And I can imagine that in a year, we're going to be having a different discussion about the limitations of AI. And really what we're talking right now is issue spotting, because we're at, the technology is not yet mature. I want to talk now about ethics of AI. We mentioned this a little bit earlier. When you use data to train an AI tool, you want to make sure you have all the appropriate permissions to to insert the data into the tool. And I was just reviewing T's and C's for a note-taking tool this morning, and those T and C's really put it on the user to make sure they had all the proper permissions before using their tool. So, you do need to make sure that everybody in the room is consenting to the use of their words at the meeting to both create the summary and also train the tool if that's what's going to happen. You want to make sure your volunteers understand your policies and their importance. And again, this is going to evolve because the policies are going to change over time. And you want to review the final content to make sure it's not misleading, fraudulent, biased, or discriminatory in any sense. This is, probably the most difficult review that you'll do, but you just need to review what comes out using your common sense to make sure that it is ethical. Believe it or not, there is, I was just trying to catch Ryan. It is very funny. It's just having is not the same as actually correct. Correct. I mean, you as the user are responsible for obtaining the permissions. The tool, the vendor does not care because they're going to put all liability back on the user.
I'm sorry, I should have just said it. I was trying not to interrupt, and it interrupted you anyway.
Right. Interrupt,
yeah,
please.
Yeah, but I mean that, like what you just said, I mean that was your Zoom Otter example is a great example of that, right? Where they're not necessarily getting consent and permission, but yet they're in their TNC, so they're putting it back saying, "Oh, well, you said okay to this because you signed up, signed up for it." So,
right. Yeah, unfortunately, it's not fun to read those T's and C's, and people don't like to do it. So
no.
Right now, there's no comprehensive federal AI law in the US. It maybe is a matter of time. President Biden did issue an executive order on the safe, secure, and trustworthy development and use of artificial intelligence back in October, the themes of which are AI is here to stay. We must be ready to use it responsibly. It has the extraordinary potential for good, but also for harms. More to come. States are starting to regulate in AI. There's a number of, I would say a handful of states have issued regulations. For example, California, they're always in the forefront. They've issued a regulation that businesses must inform consumers about the use of automated decision-making technology and that consumers can opt out if they wish to opt out of the company's use of that technology. Again, more to come. This is just the beginning. Europe is ahead of the US. They often are in this area, and they've already, EU, I think, already has an act on AI, which I haven't looked into yet, but it's just a matter of time before the US follows suit. But the states will be ahead of the feds in that regard. Okay, the next. I've kind of addressed this already. AI, the laws and regulations are evolving quickly. It's very hard to keep abreast of everything that's happening. So if I would just say anything, is use common sense, keep in mind the concerns that we've discussed today, and review the terms and conditions of the tool you are using to make sure you understand how your information may be used either to train the tool or otherwise. Make sure that your use is allowed or not prohibited by the tool, but most likely if you're at the point of entering into a contract, your use has been allowed. Okay. Although we had some issues with that as well, Mark.
We did.
So, okay, we dealt with note-taking as a special use of AI, and it's a use that's near and dear to everybody because no one likes to take minutes and type up their minutes after a meeting. So again, just make sure you understand whether the AI tool, is gaining access to your confidential information and then using that information to train the tool for other people's use. You can skip, we've really addressed that. For your organizations in developing a policy, and I can say here at ASCP, both ASCP and ASCP BOC, we are in the process of developing a policy. We started slowly because we really wanted to see how things emerged over the past year, but I think we're at the point that both entities will be finalizing policies soon, which will be aligned with each other. But in terms of developing a policy, I recommend that you use a cross-functional team to make sure that all the stakeholders who would be using AI is able to weigh in and discuss how they might be able to use or what their concerns are with respect to the use. Make sure the data that you're using is good. Obviously, the AI is only as good as the data you're using. So make sure that the underlying data being used to train the tool is good. Be privacy vigilant. These tools are aggregating data even exponentially from when data has been aggregated earlier. So you want to make sure that, and you never know when you're dealing with a vendor, but that they are sensitive to security and, that they're sensitive to security and data privacy issues. I would recommend that you start small, do a pilot program when you start to use an AI tool and develop a verification and testing strategy so that you're comfortable with the outputs coming out of the platform. We've done that here at ACP and at the BOC, and we've used SMEs to check the outputs to make sure that we're comfortable, but we're still starting small. You want to prepare your team members with training, and then over time, you're going to be adjusting your policies as the technology evolves, just as with any policy that your organization would have. Here might be a good time to stop for questions.
Yeah, hi Lisa. I had a quick question. This is kind of for you and Mark, though, because I was thinking about this earlier. Have ASCP and BOC taken a look to see if ChatGPT and other generative AIs are kind of pulling that Ned Flanders on our IP? And if so, how do you approach that? Do we care? I'm assuming we do. And then what do we do, and what can we do to address that, violation and misuse of our IP?
It's a good question. We are going to be taking action moving forward to use AI tools to check for the misuse of our IP in the internet. So that is one area that we are, as Amy said earlier, that we are definitely exploring at the very beginning stages.
Yep. And the key, Joe, will be we find.
Okay, thank you. It's one of those things like, I know we're going to find it great.
Yep, I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Aubrey. I think, just to be fair to what Lisa had shared in this key indicator as shown here is really around, this advancing technology and the safety and security. To your good point, Dennis, right? We don't want for our intellectual property to be others' intellectual property, and so that's where we're starting. But we really appreciate all of you as partners to help us explore, again, intellectual property protection, safety, but also innovation. So if we go to that next slide, Mark, we'll open it up for questions. We'd love to hear from you all as partners and any recommendations, policies you're even developing with your organizations. This is certainly a learning collaborative.
I wondered if it's not too bold to ask other partners here or maybe even afterwards. We haven't at ADLM's Board of Certification We have not created a formal policy around the use of AI in the use of specifically of generative AI in exam item writing. As an example, we have discussed with our item writers and with our committees, and at this time, we're opting to not use generative AI for new item writing or for current item review. We are still doing it the traditional way with experts in the field reviewing the content and providing the references to support it. What I'm wondering is if it's not too bold to ask this group where there is exam-based and assessment-based certifications or exam-based, assessment-based products, board prep materials, quiz materials, where there's a policy at your institutions to use or not use.
As previously shared, Dennis, our perspective, current state for the BOC is we have let all of our qualification work group and examination committee members know that AI of any form cannot be used in the development of item bank resources. And so that's where we're starting. But again, would love to hear from others as to their perspective and policy.
And Mark and Lisa may have opened a nice question that everybody will bring back too, but it's a good question.
Hi, Dennis. It's Jim Flanagan at ASCLS. We do not have a policy around AI. I do not anticipate that we will have a policy around AI, but we also don't do any certification. So, we sponsor the board of certification to do that for us. I can absolutely see the threats around certification and assessment and needing to have strong policies with the board of certification. I think certainly something we would support. I can tell you that the use of AI in the educational programs is picking up steam quite rapidly. At our educators conference in February, there were at least 3 sessions on the use of generative AI for development of assessments so these are tests, as well as development of content. There were tutorials around how to use prompts, do prompt engineering to produce the results that you want. So I think it's being used within the programs by the educators to make them more effective at doing their work. The same concerns that were raised in this presentation have been raised in other venues from my perspective. Earlier this week, I was on a webinar with the folks from Higher Logic, which is a community platform that many of our organizations use. Higher Logic is rolling out AI tools based on ChatGPT, and they provided the whole roadmap of where they see this going in the next year. We've already turned those tools on for us. It's only available to administrators at this point. But tagging content, we're from an organizational perspective, and as somebody who's responsible for administering the organization, we're embracing AI technology because we think we can provide greater member value to do that. But I think the kind of big question that will eventually affect all of us in terms of the policy making for our organizations is the utilization of AI, generative AI, within healthcare. This morning, Stat News had coverage of a new tool that was developed by Harvard and UMass, I think, called, I'm trying to read it. The headline is New AI for Biopsies Can Analyze Microscopy. Talk to pathologists about your tumor. It's on Stat. I'm gonna copy this into the chat so you all have access to it. I think that's where I think all of us are probably going to need to develop guidance, professional guidance on how any of this works. AFCLS, AGT, and SAF Mills, who have a joint annual meeting in July, have invited a healthcare informaticist from who spoke at CLIAC, their last meeting, about the utilization of generative AI in healthcare. That's our opening keynote speaker. We believe that strongly enough that we need to be informing laboratory professionals about what's going on and how, even though they are probably all very comfortable with the utilization of versions of AI and algorithms within how they do their work, because they have to be, um, that is going to eventually branch out to the pre-analytical and post-analytical phases of testing. It's inevitable. And I'm sure that we would prefer to control, we being the profession, would prefer to control that process as opposed to have it controlled by others. But given the kind of issues that were raised in this presentation, they're very similar in a wider scope to how they're employed in healthcare. There should be some real concerns about the utilization of generative AI within healthcare right now, because I think there is kind of a natural culture within healthcare, given how overworked everybody is. That's a great shortcut. It sounds right. Let's go with it. And it's oftentimes not right. And there's people's lives that are in balance. So I think AI is accelerating. It might feel overwhelming right now that in the last year or the last even 6 weeks that it's taken up such a huge portion of our mental cycles. But I think it's going to get even bigger. If you look at where data centers are being created, what anticipated demands there are for electricity in parts of the country to support those AI data centers.
Right.
It's here to stay, and it's going to be bigger, I think, than any of us can currently imagine.
Yeah, and right now, a lot of these platforms are really expensive, too expensive for small organizations really to use. But if the costs go down over time, I mean, hospitals may be able to afford it, but smaller organizations probably currently can't afford these closed systems. But yeah, I mean, you saw the example in the urology study that I showed you. I mean, the conclusion of that journal article was not yet. We're not there. But I don't know what the answer will be in 2 years.
6 months.
It's 6 months, right?
Months.
Yeah. It took the computer a little while to beat Kasparov, right? I mean,
Right.
but it's definitely coming, Jim. I appreciate your comments. I agree, and I think that the more astute we are, the more aware we are, the more we continue to seek our own ability to opt in or opt out. Those are all going to be helpful. And the close, just even the year we've been dealing with this with BOC and ASCP, the costs of the closed models for us to experiment with have come way down, and that's only going to get better, because that allows us to play in safe places with those licensed versions. We couldn't afford those licensed versions, 18 months ago. They're still expensive, but it's heading in the right direction for us to experiment safely in closed models. And I welcome that change.
Hi, this is Aubrey with NSH. We also don't certify, so we're not dealing with those certification issues. But we do have people who write blog posts for us, or write some articles for us publications. So, in the last 2 years, we've generated some, our information from authors includes information about the use of AI when writing those blog posts and making sure it's original content. We've also had to have some conversations with speakers about the things they submit. So I know and I know our peer review journal is working with our publisher, and they're dealing with those issues on the regular. So trying to work through what that looks like, in the publishing world, you have all those paper farms that are out there now, and they're being pushed and generated by AI. And so that's especially for a small niche journal like us, we get slammed with that type of stuff, a lot of submissions. So it's something we're trying to, deal with and figure out how we navigate that moving forward so that we're not becoming kind of a victim of that with, poor research or just lies, quite frankly, things you can't reproduce. So, it's something even in us, we're a small organization, but we're dealing with in our own small ways. But we don't have overarching policies yet, but it's something we're talking about. I'm not even sure our board, quite frankly, and our members would be educated level to write policies at this point. So it's still more conversational, trying to do those educational things, making sure people are aware. And that's separate from, right, what Jim just talked about, what's actually going on in their labs and their research and how they're using it in their work is kind of different than in this more academic setting, right? Or when they're dealing with their association. So it's an interesting conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Aubrey.
Amy, anything else?
Any other comments or insights?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that our partners have every opportunity to ask questions or provide their perspective too. Thank you, Aubrey. Thank you, Jim, Ryan, Joe, others, and certainly thank you to our presenters today for, I would say offering guidance along this journey as well. We at the BOC certainly hope that this has been a meaningful resource, as is always true with these professional partners collaborations. We will resource you with the recording and any other reference material. So we do have published documents. Jim, we can certainly add what you shared today to those resources and make sure that we, share that with all of you, whether in attendance today or if you're listening to this recording at a later time. So with that, we'll wrap up. And again, Robin will be your point of contact. Please know that even though we use Zoom today, we are not feeding its AI system. So what you've shared with us is safe. And in fairness, we'll be reaching out for the open forum where, even today, if you're like, hey, Amy, we're interested in a topic as we plan for future meetings and initiatives, please just let me know. We are preparing for our board meeting this fall in early September. We look forward to seeing many of you there, as well as at our examination committees, qualification work groups, and beyond. But just please know we're just an email away. We're here to help, and I'll open it up for any feedback, AI or otherwise, and then Robin will be point of contact to reach out to you and gather any ideas for our next collaborative session. So I'll give it the
only thing
seconds.
The only thing I was just gonna bring up is a lot of this topic, being somebody who's just gone through and did a whole course on that was just emerging AI, right? And I think I put in the chat, like one of the assignments was to teach ChatGPT something we were an expert at. So I taught it how to do a gross description because, being 20 years and doing this, I think I know what I'm doing. So, and it was fun. It was actually really a lot of fun to do, but it also made me, that's one reason why I was like, we've got to start a special interest group within our PA group for people who are using this or understand or interested in using it, to make sure that we're educating them on the proper ways to do it, because that's, I think, is the biggest problem with anything in these AI tools, is they're not being used as tools. They're being used as a final thing, and it's not. It is a tool, right? Just like a scalpel, just like a microtome, it is a tool, right? And so that's something that I would say is potentially, as to go back to your members or even form groups in there and figure out how to teach your members how to use this stuff as a tool, because like you said, it is not going away, and it is something that could be very, very useful to us if it's properly done.
Agree.
So.
Thank you so much, Ryan. This is certainly one that needs to be under the microscope, right? As we study it, assess it, and the like. So love your idea about the SIGs, the scientific interest groups. I know at ASCP, NSH, ASCLS, other groups that are joining us here today. I'm sure ADLM, AAPA, we are resourcing by way of education, but to your good credence, this is an opportunity for us to lean in even more. So thank you for that. All right. Well, sincere thanks to everyone. Look forward to seeing you at least 1 to 2 more times this year for our collaborative. We'll again continue to monitor ideas, requested topics, and calendars to bring this group back together. If there's ever an opportunity to extend our invitations to other partners in the field, please reach out to us. And again, we look forward to your feedback for future topics and opportunities to, again, assure accurate nomenclature as well as objectify the potential of AI while we all study the pitfalls together. So thank you very much. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for a great session. Appreciate it.
Thank you all so much. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.